This show is made possible by the generous support of listeners just like you. Our show is about helping souls grow, prosper, and evolve, and every gift ensures that we can continue to do this. So we thank our generous supporters and also ask if you would like to be a part of supporting this important effort to bring this message of truth to the world. Please consider heading to experienceofthesoul.com/support to be a part of supporting us by being a regular patron or making a one-time gift. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
Zen Living Realty, Supportek Staffing, and Center for the Healing Arts present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 139, Unconditional Love. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello, and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host. I'm here in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Welcome to episode 139 of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. I hope that your February is going great, and we've got a great show here lined up for you.
We do. This is, I'll just tell you, this is my favorite show ever we're recording today. It's called Unconditional Love, and it is absolutely the highest calling for all of us as souls on the journey. And in preparing for this show, I was very aware of times I have done this and times I have not. So be prepared as you listen to this show. It will be challenging. It will be exhilarating. It will be supportive. It will be confrontive. So we're going to start with the scripture. I asked Dave if he would read for me from book of Matthew.
Yeah, this is Matthew 5:38 through 48. And the heading of this section is Concerning Retaliation. This is from the NRSV. You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. This next section is love for enemies. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
Oh, that's intense. That is intense. And that is, in fact, the definition of unconditional love. And I'm bringing this to our attention, number one, because we say we are souls who want to evolve. And this is the evolved self. This is the evolved self. And I was praying about, thinking about, contemplating these verses. And over the last few days, especially, I was thinking about all the people that I admire. And all the people that I admire have this in common, that they're able to love people who don't love them. And my mom was incredible at this, although like everybody loved my mom, but she was really, really capable of standing in love when it was a tough situation. That's something I'll always have, as a gift from her. But as I was looking at people in history, like literally Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., even the Buddha, when talking about holding on to hatred and what it does to you. He basically says it's like holding on to a hot coal and thinking somebody else might get burned. So I think, as souls, we feel that if we hate people who are different than us, and somehow we have power over. And so in our culture right now, hatred can be kind of disguised and sometimes not so disguised. But, tearing somebody down on Facebook is a sign of hatred. Saying things about people in a public forum is an act of hatred. And what we don't realize is that anytime we participate in those activities, what we're really telling the world is, I hate myself. Because hatred of others is simply a reflection of the aspects of self that you hate. So I want you to really think about the things that drive you crazy, the things that you hate, and think about what that is saying. And how do you handle those things? Are you going outward and sending bad energy to people? I've had it done to me. I've had people say very negative things about me on Facebook. And, you just have to, you can't entertain it. You can't defend it. So, I've gotten in the habit of just sending those people love because, any other action is perceived as an attack or a defense. And in fact, it is. It is an attack or a defense. So the only appropriate response is to just send love that direction. So, that's when I've been able to do it, as I can see if somebody is, it's not like it's happened a lot. It's only happened a couple of times over many, many years. But when it happens, it's like at first you want to go, oh, and I just realized that it's really about them and their self-hatred than it is about me or anything I would have ever done, certainly. But I think, the masters, the people that we've called masters in history have abided by this scripture. So anybody who has known me long knows I'm a real lover of Mother Teresa. I've studied her and her ministry. I've read the books about her. My mom loved her. And there's this story one time of she went to a local bakery to ask for bread for the children, obviously, that she was feeding. And the baker got so mad that he spit on her, Mother Teresa. And he said, how dare you ask for my hard-earned bread? So anyway, he spit on her. And so she took a towel and wiped it off. And then she said, that was for me. Now, do you have any bread? Wow. Crazy big love. Do you feel that? It makes me cry to tell that. Whew. So what do you think happened? He gave her bread. He was so shamed by her act of love because she did not react. Wow. Because she did not react, he gave her the bread because he realized something higher was going on. Something higher was going on. And it's called unconditional love. And that kind of love only comes from knowing God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with all we're seeing in the world, everything is so polarized. It's like, where is this love? I don't think we would be, where we are today in civil rights if it hadn't been for Martin Luther King Jr. And the appropriate way really to say that is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I've studied his speeches for many, many years. And I think I got it at the King Center years ago, his book of speeches. But there's one he gave in August 1952. And he says that love is this kind of love is necessary for the survival of civilization. And we see that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
If we keep hating each other and the one with the biggest gun wins, we're in trouble. And we're in trouble right now as a nation. I've seen on Facebook, people that really, people that were in the Democratic Party were just hating Trump. And people in the Trump Party now are hating Biden. And I'm like, wow, these are two individuals. Yes, they represent thought, and yes, they represent maybe a different view than quote unquote the other side. But demonizing somebody is not the highest love there is. So what we see, though, is just an escalation now from both sides. So I have a strong concern about where our civilization is going, because I believe love is the key to the world's problems. That what we're seeing right now in the world are problems of the soul. They can't be legislated. They can't be solved politically. I mean, yes, there need to be certain laws. I'm not saying that, but really, these are problems of the soul. And again, Dr. King said those words: "Love is key to the solution of the world's problems." Yes, even he says, "Love for enemies." Right? Because what we know about hatred is distorting. Hatred starts us thinking things that are not even factual. They become emotive. And then we know actions that are irresponsible, come from that. So hatred distorts our perspective. It even distorts our personality, that we begin to think and do things that we wouldn't normally think and do. And it becomes like this, the feeling tone of who we are. And so then everything pisses us off, and I don't even like that word. I'm going to cut it out of my vocabulary, but it makes us act from a place, that isn't in integrity with what we are called to be as souls. So if you're out there and you're one of those people making those Facebook posts, I don't care which candidate you're for, I would ask you to just consider, is it loving? Is it from the highest place of love, what you're doing? I disagreed with many of Trump's policies. I don't agree with all of Biden's either, but I'm certainly not going to demonize them. I'm going to vote my conscience. I'm going to do everything I can, from as a citizen and as somebody who votes and as somebody who's involved in my community. So love is key, friends. Love is key. The greatest teachers of all time are telling us, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Yeah, and it's interesting we're talking about this word hate, because we recently had with Mindy Corcoran, the Real Grief, Real Healing show, Rabbi
Yes.
Jeffrey Myers, and
Yes.
And he has removed what he calls the H word from his vocabulary, and so we'll put a link to that episode. I mean, he is the rabbi of the Tree of Life synagogue where the massacre took place. That a white supremacist murdered Mindy's son and father. And so if somebody on the planet would have license to hate, it's people involved with that. But it's really inspiring hearing him talk about that. And you mentioned removing that word. And I admit, especially after hearing that interview, is the word hate it really feels charged. So even when I see like on TV or something, or seeing like a teenager going, I hate this, and I'm like, oof, hate, that's a really, really heavy word to just be randomly tossing around. Like Hollywood tells us that the word love, when characters say I love you, that really holds weight. And so we've been conditioned to believe that, but the opposite is true as well.
Yes, it is. And I want to talk a little bit more when we come back, because what we want to remember too is that there's always another option, right? And so I believe at the level of the soul, we are love, we are made of love, and we are meant to love unconditionally. So in the second half, we're going to talk a little bit more about what can change when we live from unconditional love. And we'll be back right after this brief message.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Zen Living Realty. Zen Living Realty's mission is to mindfully serve, connect, and positively impact their customers, partners, and community through their Zen approach to real estate. Their vision is to be the most trusted real estate brokerage in the Central Florida area. You can reach Zen Living Realty at zenlivingrealty.com or call 407-800-2717. We'd also like to give a special word of thanks to Supportek Staffing. Supportek Staffing is an innovative staffing agency built on the principle of caring about employers and employees as they navigate these new workforce and workplace challenges. If you're an employer, they want to be your human resource partner and help with the changes needed during the pandemic. If you're a candidate, they want to become your lifelong career agent to help you grow into your fullest potential. Supportek prioritizes support over volume, integrity over profits, and will treat your business and your career as if it was their own. You can learn more at supportekstaffing.com. That's SUPPORTEK staffing.com. And finally, we want to give a special word of thanks to Center for the Healing Arts. Center for the Healing Arts is one of the first dedicated group practices devoted to challenging, supportive, and nurturing therapy. Their dedicated therapists have a wide range of expertise, including relationship and couples therapy, individual therapy, addictions, neurofeedback, play therapy for children, adolescents, and families, and therapy for blended family issues. They also regularly offer day-long intensive workshops for relationships, addiction recovery, adult children of alcoholics, and healing trauma in the LGBTQ+ community. For more information, head over to centerforthehealingarts.com or call 407-657-8555, extension 1. We now return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. I warned you it was going to be an intense show, an intense first half. But friends, I feel a spiritual mandate to talk about these things. And I have my whole life, my whole career, really felt like we all have a higher calling. And it's why we talk so much about living from soul, because when we live from the soul, we realize we have this tremendous responsibility to live life from this higher awareness, that we want to live life from love. And so the first half, we were talking so much about, what some of the greats have told us, that first, Jesus, the words attributed to Jesus, love your enemies. You have heard it said that we should hate our enemies. And Jesus says, no, 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 love your enemies. I mean, this is the same person who on the cross said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I think in this world, in this culture, we have a hard time even imagining that kind of love. But it is possible, and it is, frankly, our spiritual calling. And that's what the spiritual work is, to find those places where we still feel hurt, where we still feel vulnerable and unsafe, and realize it's those unhealed places that cause us to react and defend and be in fear instead of love. So as I said last half, that hatred distorts our perspective. It distorts even our personality. And I've seen individuals that were on a spiritual journey suddenly shift and let hatred take hold, and they are unrecognizable as people. And we don't want to do that, friends. We don't, and we don't want to hide behind a political party to do it, to justify our hatred. There's something so much bigger and grander and bolder and bigger, for us to do and be. And so if we can find that place where the love is bigger than our fear or our hatred, then unconditional love ends all resentment and all retaliation. Can you imagine that? That unconditional love could end all resentment and the need for retaliation. Just imagine that. What if you didn't have to defend and your job was to love and to let go of resentment. Many years ago, I was in a 12-step meeting. It was an Al-Anon meeting. And I heard a woman who later became my sponsor. She said, I realize I've been with my husband 30 years, and I realize I'm still resenting him. And you know what? My resentment isn't hurting him. It's hurting me. I resent him for his drinking. I resent him for not getting sober. I resent him for making alcohol more important than me. And she said, and you know what? My resentment's only hurting me. He has a disease. I have to decide how I'm going to deal with my response to his disease. But resenting him is like taking a poison and hoping somebody else will die. And resentment is just hatred. But see, what she discovered in that statement was she was really hating herself for not changing. She was really hating herself for not doing what she should do in that situation. And of course, nobody wants their spouse to drink or use, but she realized that she was building up resentments about things she had no control over. And it was making her miserable. And friends, there is a tremendous impact, negative impact to us when we hate. It's physical, it's psychological, it is emotional, it is spiritual, it is mental. It's like every aspect of who we are gets impacted when we hate. And when we disagree with something, if we let that build and then we start getting beliefs around it, well, pretty soon it's a full-on hate. And I just want to bring this to your attention because I care about you. I care about you as a soul, and I'm concerned at people who call themselves spiritual and are constantly posting things that are in hatred, because it is only hurting you physically, psychologically. It's just, please, please, please think about if you've posted something like that, take it down and start doing the work. Start going inward to see what in you has gotten touched, what in you has been activated that's causing you to hate another. Those resentments that we hold, it's like it's high blood pressure, it's stomach ulcers, it's heart problems, it's anxiety, it's fear. All of these things are what build to create hatred, right? Anxiety and fear and worry and the feeling of being unsafe, right? Which is all goes back to fear. And so what a lot of us do is when we feel this fear, well, somebody has to pay for it. So then we act out. And the acting out is that hatred of ourselves being projected outward onto someone else. And I have a huge concern as I look out on the world that this is becoming modus operandi. This is how we operate. But unconditional love frees, it heals, it forgives. Unconditional love ends resentment, it ends retaliation, it ends the need to be right. Unconditional love is higher than anything you're ever going to see in a news cycle. It's higher than any political party. So just breathe that in, that unconditional love could end all resentment and the need for retaliation. There is something higher that's being asked of us. Part of the issue in our world today is people stuck in a hate cycle are not aware they're doing it. What they think is there's this ideology that they think is so right that some are willing to die for it. That's how you get terrorism. It's ideology over humanity. I was in a store the other day. I've been doing a lot of work on my home, so I've been at the hardware store every other day. And there's an employee that had helped me there many times. And I was so surprised. I overheard him say, "Oh, everything in the world right now is ridiculous. I'm for civil war." He said it out loud, and I almost cried. I thought, who would say that, number one, out loud? And I thought, this is a man in pure desperation and hatred. He feels completely out of control, and the only way he sees out of it is civil war. You know how many hundreds of years that's taken us back? Civil war. And the greatest leaders of our time have said the opposite. If our civilization is going to survive, friends, we've got to find another way. Hating and worrying about always being right, and even, I'll be honest, even the late night shows that are making comedy of what's happening in the world is very dangerous. Because what's happening in the world right now is anything but funny. It is dangerous. It's dangerous. And that's another way we hide our hatred, is by laughing at others. You know, I thought it was so interesting when people were saying that when former President Trump made fun of somebody with cerebral palsy, and well, then all of the that was awful, but then everybody made fun of him for making fun of it. And it's like, this is the same action and the same behavior. Down south, we'd say that's the pot calling the kettle black. And so it looks, I know there's anger, and anger is fine, but projecting the anger outward is when we start to get into trouble. And I know there's going to be people mad about me saying this, but I can tell you that meeting anger with anger only gets more anger. Until we can meet anger with unconditional love, we're going to see more and more of what we've been seeing. So imagine if you could find unconditional love in yourself when there's a situation like that. Imagine finding unconditional love. We saw it in the city of Orlando after the Pulse shooting, that there was so much hatred that caused that shooting, but the city responded in love. The city responded in love. So our call as souls, we often say, is to grow, prosper, and evolve. So the world desperately needs to evolve past its hatred of other, especially in political parties, especially. We see it, of course, racially. We see it politically. We see it in religion. We see it in every aspect. And remember, all hatred of other is hatred of self. All resentment hurts us and not the other. So we want to rise above this idea of other. We want to move into living from the space of the heart. Like right now, if I said just breathe for 20 seconds, and I'm going to do it right now, I'm going to just breathe for 20 seconds and just see if I can find that place of love in myself. For 20 seconds, we're going to go into silence on purpose. Don't think we're off the air for 20 seconds. We're going to breathe. Do you feel any better? Do you feel any different? As I breathe, what I notice is that I could get down into my heart and I could feel love instead of just thinking about it. As I live my life, I'm looking to the Mother Teresa's, the Jesus Christ, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and yes, even Gandhi. This was his favorite scripture. You may know that Gandhi's life ended. He was shot. And as soon as he was shot, he said, I forgive you. This is our call, friends, to rise higher than the fray, to rise higher than this hatred that distorts who we are and who God is in us. So my hope, my prayer for you as you go through your day, as you go through the week, is if you feel yourself starting to go into that negative energy, that you can bring it up and rise higher than that and move into your highest God self, that you move into the soul of you where God lives, where unconditional love is what you are made of. That unconditional love is what the universe, the very fabric of the universe, is made of. So my prayer for you as you go through the day is that you will not only feel this and know this, but you'll begin to live this in the world. And as you look at your Facebook page, start cleaning up the hatred. Let's stop using these public forums to spread hate of another. We want to rise higher and live from love. So we bless you on the journey, dear friend, and we hope always for you and for your soul that our show helps your soul grow, prosper, and evolve. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by Zen Living Realty, Supportek Staffing, and Center for the Healing Arts. This channel is also made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2021 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.